October time, the month of drinking beer and dressing up in costume, although for some of us that isn't much of a change from the rest of the year. But like every month, I'm going to answer questions that $5 supporters asked in September. If you have questions for October, links are below. Let's start on Patreon, where Anon Donor asks, what are your views of GLP-1, such as Wegovy, Ozempic, and Zepbound Monjuro, being used for weight loss and the opposition of use for weight loss? Semaglutides like Ozempic and the others are medicine designed to treat type 2 diabetes. It mimics the GLP-1 hormone that you mentioned, which tells the pancreas to make more insulin. A side effect of it is weight loss, so people have been using it off-label for that purpose. Standard disclaimer before we go on, I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Consult a licensed physician if you want to know more. It can help you with weight loss, although of course they want you to combine it with lifestyle changes like diet and exercise. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that it hasn't been FDA approved for weight loss. Off-label use of drugs happens all the time. It's called repositioning, and it's responsible for tons of treatments we might not have otherwise if off-label use weren't allowed. It can also reduce your risk of certain chronic diseases, including heart disease, stroke, and some types of cancer. It can also be a lower risk alternative to bariatric surgery, like stomach stapling, for obese people with hormone issues. There are complications, though. Most worryingly, it can result in serious pancreatic and kidney problems, although those problems are fewer than they are with other appetite suppressants like phentermine, since semaglutides are more targeted. And if you take too much of it, you can put yourself into starvation mode, where you'll lose weight all right, but the wrong kind. Your body will start to burn muscles and even bone to gain energy. When we talk about weight loss, we really should be talking about fat loss. Keep that in mind. Ozempic is pretty safe when used as directed, but abuse or misuse can be a problem, like when you take it without also making the recommended lifestyle changes. In addition to the problem I just mentioned, it can increase the probability of other side effects, result in malnutrition and other deficiencies, and even have bad effects on your mental health, including depression and anxiety. But all of this is going to vary from person to person. I can't tell you if you should take it or not. That's between you and your doctor. But I can tell you that it isn't a magic pill. It may work well for some people, but be problematic for others. Again, ask your doctor. Darth Vega asks, are you an anime fan? What are some of your favorites? Not a fan. I've just seen the classics like Starship Yamato, Akira, Princess Mononoke, others like that. Over on Subscribestar, FunwithFacts asks, what are your thoughts on the Freedom to Vote Act? A lot of it's fairly straightforward. It only applies to federal offices and establishes same-day voter registration, 2 weeks of early voting, and automatic registration. A lot of states have already had these as a standard. It would also make Election Day a federal holiday, which would solve a lot of problems with things like using schools as voting centers. There are some other things about people with disabilities. 16 and 17-year-olds can register if they'll be 18 by the next election, things like that. One big one is voter-verified paper ballots, preserving paper ballots reviewable by the voter and available for recounts. That's something we've been missing with a lot of these mystery boxes that are voting machines where you hit a button and it says, trust me. One bad part is where it tries to undo a lot of the free speech protections of Citizens United and even calls for overturning it. It also supports making, although it wouldn't actually make, DC a state. I've talked about my feelings on that before and why that's a horrible idea. DC was never supposed to be a population center. Just as the Virginia portions were returned to Virginia and became the city of Arlington, I think the remaining population centers should be returned to Maryland and just let DC be the government buildings like it's supposed to be. Then you wouldn't have to worry about DC having electoral votes or representation in Congress or anything else, because no one would be a resident of DC. They'd all be Marylanders. It also tries to ban partisan gerrymandering, which, first of all, the Supreme Court says they can't do. That's up to the states. But the problem is, How do you even define it? Any sort of districting method is going to benefit one party or the other. This bill is your typical mixed bag. There's some good stuff, but a lot of it would inhibit freedom of speech and put decisions that should belong to the states in the hands of the FEC, which has always operated along nationalistic and authoritarian lines. Some of the amendments make things worse, like no-excuse mail-in voting, and we saw the problem with that in 2020, didn't we? Regardless of whether or not you think the results were legitimate, how can you defend that as a method? It also inhibits the ability of states to verify that a registered voter is actually an eligible voter and remove him from the rolls if he isn't. Keep in mind that these are as bad as someone being denied the right to vote. Ineligible voters dilute the power of everyone else's vote. And in the case of presidential elections, it's downright unconstitutional, since the Constitution makes it plain that only the state legislatures get to choose the manner of selecting electors. Congress just can't seem to help themselves. There could be a Help Old Ladies Across the Street Act, and they'd throw in unconstitutional violations just because. And finally, Dickin Myanus asks, what happens when an unstoppable force hits an unmovable wall? Nothing, because neither of those exist. And that's a good thing. The unstoppable force would have to have an infinite amount of energy and momentum, whereas the wall would have to be of infinite mass. Yes, the wall would instantly form a black hole. In fact, that would make it impossible for the force to hit it, since space-time would be warped so much it would always curve around it. You could never actually interact with a black hole of infinite mass because space-time would be infinitely curved around it. In fact, at that point, the wall itself wouldn't even be experiencing time. All moments in time would exist simultaneously for it, so the concept of it being hit by something else is meaningless. The former wall, now black hole, would also be traveling at the speed of light, which creates a paradox of its own. An object of finite mass approaching C would gain mass, becoming infinite as it reaches C. That's how it would become immovable. The object would then be unable to change its velocity and be stuck traveling at C. However, it's also the case that an object of infinite mass cannot be moving. If you plug it into the Lorentz equation, mass approaching infinity means that the Lorentz factor must also approach infinity, which can only happen if velocity approaches zero, not the speed of light. As for the irresistible force, the one with infinite momentum, it's not just irresistible to other massive objects, but to space-time itself. It would create a rip in the fabric of the universe everywhere it went, sending out gravitational waves that propagate throughout the universe. Its distortion of space-time would be so great that time would slow down or even stop near it, resulting in closed time loops, and it would create new matter and energy straight from the quantum vacuum and blast this new matter outward at high temperature near the speed of light, including antimatter that would destroy any matter it came into contact with. Try and bring the two together, and since the force can never actually meet the mass, it will infinitely spiral around it, throwing off gravitational waves that would destroy all the galaxies and antimatter that would blow them apart as it sends out tears in space-time that rip them all to shreds. Also, just from purely a philosophical basis, if you have an unstoppable force, you cannot have an immovable object, and vice versa. So, this situation is logically impossible, and please don't try it, or else you'll destroy the universe. So, thanks so much for watching. Comments for the Comic God, shares for the Share Throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell, and check out other videos on my channel and like and share them as well. And of course, go to donate.bogosity.tv for all sorts of ways to support, including PayPal, Venmo, and various cryptocurrencies, or become a regular supporter at Patreon, Subscribestar, and Discord to get these videos early and ad-free and participate in live streams and AMAs like this one. Thanks again, and until next time, stay strong and be free.